watching Goal Line Extended, presented by Lacrosse Flash.
What's going on, lacrosse fans? Welcome to Goal Line Extended on the Lacrosse Flash Podcast Network. Today is Friday, June 11, and I'm your host, Ryan Hulsebos. Glad that you could join us as we get set to look ahead to Week 2 of the PLL season, live from Atlanta, Georgia, set to start tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern between the Chaos and the Water Dogs, both teams seeking their first win of 2021, and they'll each have two chances to get that first win as they'll face off on Friday night, and then the Water Dogs have a scheduled game with Chrome on Sunday, followed by the Chaos and Archers. All three of those games live on Peacock, with Chrome and the Water Dogs on Sunday, also airing on NBCSN. And then on Saturday, we get our first game of the season on NBC between the two defending champions, the Whipsnakes, the two-time PLL defending champs, and the 2020 MLL champions, the Cannons. And that game is set for noon Eastern tomorrow, followed by the Redwoods and Atlas. That game will also be on Peacock and NBCSN. And we're going to dive right into those games in a few moments. But let me first welcome in the other members of today's show. Harrison Silcox, Liam Kelly. Gentlemen, welcome back to GLE, ready to look ahead to Week 2 of the season. How are you guys feeling today?
I'm good, Ryan. I'm glad the PLL is underway. Wasn't much of a break there from the college to the pro season, and we're underway. It was a fun weekend to open the season, and I'm looking forward to what they bring in Atlanta.
Yeah, it feels like we never left. We're just right back at it.
Hey, we won Monday, national championship, really Final Four weekend there, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We had some women's college lacrosse as well for the Final Four there that first weekend, the Memorial Day weekend. And then right into Week 1, as Joe Keegan said, I said again on Mondays, PLL Flash. So the great thing about having games on the 3-day weekend, it's only 4 days there in between for the week. So that's a great thing that we're going to into the season. But we had a pretty wild first weekend, both on the field and off the field, and I would argue two great games, one to kick off the weekend and then one to close it on Sunday. The Redwoods winning both of those contests, putting them atop the rest of the field at 2-0, and we're hoping that Week 2 down in Atlanta lives up to the same hype, especially in terms of the on-the-field action, as we're looking forward to these 5 interesting matchups, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But I want to start today bouncing around the world of lacrosse, because on Tuesday, it was announced that the Mcintosh Cup, which is Canada's Junior A Box Lacrosse Championship, has been canceled for 2021. The announcement coming about a month after Lacrosse Canada had announced the cancellations of 10 other lacrosse national championships. So as we see sports starting to get back into full swing, we're starting to see fans back in stadiums, especially in the United States, as COVID vaccines become available and more accessible. But unfortunately, Liam, for Canadian junior lacrosse players, they're going to have to wait a little while longer here following this cancellation.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because as things are starting to ramp up, you'd hope to see enough of a league and enough time where these teams can adjust and be able to make a championship happen. But it looks like it'll just be local leagues. I know that here in BC, we're going to be doing, we'll still do a BC championship. And Ontario, it sounds like they're going to be working towards something there as well. I don't know much about Alberta, but I would imagine that they're going to try and piece something together as well. The tough part is that a lot of these teams have to fundraise, and it takes upwards of $25,000, $30,000 to get these programs to travel, get all their staff, everywhere for a full week and through a tournament, which might be longer than a week. It's really tough to get that many people organized, especially as we're transitioning back to better travel. Different provinces up here have different restrictions going on. So to try and organize all of that, it sucks, because that's it's a great tournament every year, and you get some of the best young talent. You get kids in college that you get to see on the box, on the hard floor, and then you just get competitive games. You get to see the next level of indoor superstars. You get a whole bunch of NLL guys that you wouldn't really hear of because they don't go away to college and they're not playing every week through the spring. So unfortunately, we're going to have to miss that this year, but hopefully next year it'll come back bigger and better than ever.
Absolutely. That is what we were hoping for, that next year they can have everything figured out and that we can get the Mcintosh Cup back up and running next summer. But very unfortunate, though, for the young men that we're looking forward to playing this summer, as we're slowly starting to walk our way out of the pandemic, although it does seem like some places are having a much tougher time doing that than others. But Lacrosse Canada did mention in this announcement that it's not exactly a full cancellation of the season, as they, along with their partners who compete for the Minto Cup, you mentioned a few of them there, Liam, the BC Junior A Lacrosse League, the Rocky Mountain Lacrosse League, and the Ontario Junior A Lacrosse League. All three of those leagues joined together there for the Minto Cup. They all plan to play some sort of modified season this summer based on, obviously, provincial health and safety regulations, with the players' health and safety and the health and safety of the greater lacrosse community as the top priority. And speaking of Canada, we got some promising news in the middle of the week that could see eased restrictions at the U.S. and Canadian border, as Canadian citizens and permanent residents who've been crossing the border throughout the pandemic, which includes essential workers, students, and then in our case, athletes, they'll no longer be forced to quarantine, for 14 days upon arrival and their return home. So the hope for us as lacrosse fans is that we will see a handful of those names on the unavailable to travel list back in action in the very near future. One of those names being the first overall pick of the 2020 NLL entry draft and the first overall pick of our 2021 PLL college draft, former Cornell, prospective Atlas, and now new New York Riptide attackman Jeff T, as he was signed earlier this week by the Riptide to a 2-year contract, which, Harrison, puts that rumor that he might be trying to return to college for another season at bay, and it seems to put his debut with the Atlas and the PLL out there on the horizon.
Yeah, it would make one think that, okay, at some point here, hopefully in the near future, we are going to see what Jeff Teat looks like in the PLL. He's a pretty quiet guy. The league didn't quite give him the same treatment that Grant Ament got as the first overall pick in last year's draft. So a bit quieter kind of way to come to the field, come to the PLL, even though he's not officially there yet. A bit of a quieter entrance for Jeff Teat. But like you said, we see him sign with the Riptide. That tells us, okay, he's not going back to college, which was a rumor that some people were bringing to the surface. Didn't turn out to be true. And so, yeah, one would think the league's just got to figure out this unable to travel list stuff. I obviously don't know the details that's going on there, but I'm sure that it's not a coincidence that a lot of those guys who are on that list are Canadian. But it's definitely good news for Atlas fans. I think it's good news for the league in general. Jeff Teat is somebody who I think lacrosse fans have mostly forgotten about. I think when he was beginning to emerge in Cornell, it took about a year too long for people to finally realize who Jeff Teat was. And then he was great in 2020 before the season got canceled. And then people kind of forgot about him. He didn't transfer. He didn't play this spring. Michael Sowers did. Jared Bernhardt did. Those kind of names came to the forefront. And so for Jeff Teat to finally come back, to see him on a field and play, obviously it's good news for the box game that he'll be there, but great news for fans of the field game, because you would imagine that at some point there will be an announcement, there will be a social media campaign for Jeff Teat is here, he has arrived, and he'll suit up with the Atlas, and we'll just have to see what that looks like. Early speculation on my part is how quickly, if he does eventually play for the Atlas, does he gel with that offense? Is it going to take some time? These teams don't exactly practice as much as some other pro leagues do. So how do they work that chemistry in kind of in what might be more toward the middle of the season? But regardless, we know Jeff Teat intends to play pro lacrosse. We'll see what happens with the PLL, but it seems like we're headed on a trajectory where he will be playing this season.
We're very excited to see what T can do here in his first season in both the NLL and the PLL. We're hoping to see him in that Atlas jersey very, very soon. I'd imagine Atlas fans will welcome that sight as well as we should see Trey LeClaire with the Archers back at some point, Curtis Dixon, Ryan Smith, a few other names there with the Chaos, Challen Rogers that are also on that unavailable to travel list. Just handful of names, Jesse King with Chrome, hoping to see them very, very soon. And we also received news on Tuesday that Athletes Unlimited has held their inaugural college draft, welcoming in 13 college lacrosse stars into the new professional women's lacrosse league. And then just yesterday, we got word that a partnership with Nike had been agreed to. And Liam, just a huge step here for the women's game, especially the women's pro game, which the women's game seems to be taking off over the last couple of years, especially this spring with what was an absolute dominating season from the Queen of the North.
Yeah, it should be really exciting. The deal with Nike's huge because that's going to bring a lot of ad campaigns, and it's going to stretch. I think it's going to have a bit further reach for women athletes from our sport and appearing in potential advertisements with like other Nike athletes, Kevin Durant, for example. Like, who's going to be there? There's potentially going to be someone from that league right next to him or other pro Nike athletes. Like, the exposure is huge. And the fact that this league is going to be up tempo, I think they're trying to not match the PLL for style, but it will be, I think, a bit smaller field, shorter shot clock. It's going to be high tempo. It's going to be fun to watch. All the athletes in the league are incredible. So with that added exposure as well, like we've seen the PLL on NBC, this is nothing but great news for the league. I'm definitely hoping that we'll get a platform up here where we can watch. I know that in Canada we have some concerns when it comes to certain events being available, but I'm definitely going to try and tune in if it's available. That sounds like it's going to be pretty exciting. So.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting that you said advertising, because if you think about the WNBA, Sabrina, can't think of her last name now at the top of my off the top of my head, but WNBA, we're seeing those State Farm commercials where she's in these commercials with Chris Paul, which that's an interesting thing that you just brought up, that we could see kind of cross sports here in terms of Ionesco there. Thank you, Austin there, producer here behind the scenes, help me out a little bit there. But we see that cross there with different athletes from different sports, or even the same sport, just obviously men's and women's sport, but obviously being shown in the same light, getting that same exposure. That's what we want here, obviously, for the men's lacrosse league, for the PLL, obviously, for this new women's lacrosse league as well. And we're very excited to see what Athletes Unlimited can accomplish this summer, as they are set to begin their 5-week season on July 19 with a really interesting model where the total of 56 players will be drafted to a new team each week by the top 4 players, which they will be determined by a player point system. So very excited for Athletes Unlimited, and we're looking forward to the start of their season in mid-July. All right, time to dive into this weekend's matchups, kicked off by the Chaos and the Water Dogs. And as I said before, both of these teams seeking their first win of the season. The Chaos coming off a tough draw with the Whip Snakes, and the new look Water Dogs just a bad showing overall there last weekend against the Cannons. And they'll now be without rookie Michael Sowers, who suffered what's believed to be a concussion, although that was never specified. But Harry, how do these two teams turn it around this weekend, this being the first of 2 games for both of them?
For Chaos, I think the big thing is you don't panic. They are one of the first teams that people really think of when you think about that unable to travel list, just because of the reputation that Towers has with just the Canadian talent on his roster. But don't panic. Remember last year in the bubble, they didn't play particularly well. They found their shooting stroke in the playoffs, and they got things going. And I mean, if it weren't for Zed Williams just getting hot at the absolute perfect time, Chaos, I mean, they had a lead in that championship game. So don't panic. The Redwoods lost their opener when they did the championship rematch back in 2020. They wind up almost beating the Whips. They lose to them in overtime in the semifinals. So you come into week 1, you just try to reorganize the group, get things back together. It's still a really talented squad, and you try to shake off some of the off-the-field drama that happened this last weekend. If you're the Water Dogs, I'm more concerned about the Water Dogs than I am the Chaos. For the Water Dogs, their defense looked lost for most of the last game. This is a team that a lot of people thought won the offseason, and you could still argue they did win the offseason. They brought in Dylan Ward. They brought in Ryan Brown. And they also added Michael Sowers to the group, along with plenty of other guys on that roster. But they did not look like a team that was improved from the year before. And they just didn't have one of the popular comments was just how much hustle they played with. It didn't really look like it was there, maybe because the game was out of hand. There just wasn't the same juice and energy on the sideline that you would expect. But for the Water Dogs, I'm really concerned. Sowers isn't going to play. What's this team going to look like? They just they didn't look like they were ready to start the season last weekend. So I know that they have one of the best goaltenders in the world in Dylan Ward. I think one of the better players in the league, and Zach Currier at the midfield. I really like the group that the Water Dogs have. It's just that unit has to come together and figure it out. I mean, Ryan Brown, 7 shots, no goals. A lot of those missed the cage. That's not what you expect from a guy who, at least in the field game, is, in my opinion, the best shooter in the world. I don't know where things went wrong for this team, even on the man up too. They just did not look good. So I'm concerned about the Water Dogs. I think there's a lot that team needs to patch up moving forward.
Absolutely. Talk about the Water Dogs there, that man up. It was a non-releasable there, a 2-minute non-releasable, and they had a shot clock violation. Dan on Tuesday, was very, very adamant about that. Very, very upset about that. But the Water Dogs in Chaos set for 7 p.m. Eastern tonight, Friday night, live on Peacock. So make sure to get your subscription if you haven't already, so you do not miss that game, as well as the rest of the games this season. And both of these teams, as I mentioned before, seeking their first win of the season. The War Dogs, as we mentioned, will be without attackman Michael Sowers, who was really the main catalyst of their offense last weekend. And the Chaos then will also be without attackman Austin Stotts, who has been officially suspended, along with Chrome attackman Matt Gaudette, following their off-the-field altercation over the weekend. And the Chaos come into this first game of the weekend favored by a goal and a half. And then we're going to jump around a little bit here. We'll stay with the Water Dogs in the Chaos because they both play again on Sunday afternoon. The Water Dogs against Chrome, who will be seeking their first win of the season, in the Chaos against the Archers, who proved to us last weekend just how good they are. They come in favored by 2.5 goals over the Chaos. Let's start with that first game because Chrome will be without a key piece offensively in attackman Jordan Wolf, who suffered what's being called a lower body injury. And just being our speculation and knowing of Wolf's injury history with hamstrings, this looked like largely a non-contact injury. So obviously the fear that comes with those types of injuries. But that aside, Liam, who needs to step up for this Chrome team this weekend if they want to pull this one off over the Water Dogs?
I think that what we saw in the first week when Wolf went down was they lost their key initiator. He's their ex-attackman. There's been a lot of speculation of who should they pick up to replace him. A lot of people don't like Bryce Wasserman, but he's one of the natural ideas for having an ex-attackman specifically. He plays similar to Wolf. He's just taller. I think that they're going to need some more just scoring across the board. You got a lot of guys. You got Mcintosh, who kind of leads the way when Wolf isn't around. I think he had 4 goals in that first weekend game, but he's not going to be able to, do it a full game himself. It's going to need to be guys like Rannigan, who play both sides of the ball. You're going to need a bit more depth scoring from like Heacock and some of the lefties that can come in and have been brought in to play like attack mid combo, like hybrid positions. There's no one person that's going to have to do it. It's going to have to be a little bit of everything. Justin Gutterding's going to get the number 1 pull. He's going to get the toughest matchup. So don't expect him to do it all himself. Don't expect Mcintosh to do it all himself. He's going to try. He even had a face-off win that first game. I think probably off of a Farrell violation. So they're just going to need production across the board. It's going to be important that everybody steps up because, like you said, that's a key piece that goes down for them.
Absolutely. For Jordan Wolf being still one of the best attackmen in the game, one of the fastest attackmen in the game from X, very, very dangerous. We're hoping that he is okay. Obviously, with that leg injury, he had to be walked off the field. We really haven't heard much developments there, but we will keep you posted if we hear anything else. But Harry, that second game there on Sunday, the Chaos and the Archers. The Archers impressed us last week. They went out there in the first half and really showed what they are capable of this season, not just, I would say, against the Atlas, but really against any team, whether it's settled 6-on-6, transition with the pieces they want out there kind of in an offensive transition, or we saw a Latrell Harris goal, we saw a Dominique Alexander goal, we saw a Scott Ratliff 2-point goal, so getting goals in a variety of different ways. The Archers coming into this one against the Chaos. The Chaos, they like to kind of play that fast transition there. What are you expecting from this matchup here, Chaos and Archers?
I'm expecting it to be up and down and a bit faster paced. One of the guys who I had a ton of fun playing last weekend was Ratliff. I mean, you mentioned the 2-point goal he had, but also, I mean, the passes that guy throws as an LSM are just unreal. I mean, I think that when a lot of people think of these long pulls in transition, they think of the opportunity for a step down and just a massive shot because, they're able to put a little bit more miles per hour behind whatever shot they're taking just because they're a long pull. But Ratliff's ability to pass in transition and find the open man, it's like watching Tom Schreiber with a long stick sometimes, where he kind of chokes up on the stick and he'll throw a sidearm pass on a dime to skip somebody in transition for a doorstep opportunity. And I thought he showed some of that this past weekend. So if it does become an up and down game, I like the Archers transition game a little bit more just because of what Ratliff brings. Where as a defense, I mean, you can't leave your man early, and that sort of transition you have to make when you don't have the numbers in favor of you in the transition game, or else Ratliff is going to make you pay. And then when you just look at the weapons that the Archers have, it's just ridiculous. With Holman, Manny, Ament, then you throw Schreiber into the mix, Connor Fields. We saw him shoot a 2-pointer and score last weekend. I think they're really going to tap into his ability off the ball, which I think was a huge pickup that some people kind of forgot about this offseason. Schreiber obviously is there. Latrell Harris, who our guy Austin Owens absolutely is the biggest Latrell Harris fan I think I've ever seen in my life. But he is a worthy addition to that team, especially defensively. And I don't think the Archers are playing around this year. I think they're a team that's all business, and they feel like that championship opportunities have kind of been stolen from them in the last 2 years. They had plenty of momentum rolling in 2020. They obviously weren't able to get there. You go back to 2019, Schreiber gets hurt on a hit in transition and the playoff game against the Redwoods. And they're a team that I think with a few, hurdles that got in their way, just from looking at their roster, I think they have been the closest team to a championship after the Whip Snakes, just because of the talent that's there. They've just kind of hit some unfortunate bumps in the road at the wrong time. So I love what the Archers bring to the table this year. I don't think that the Chaos are going to be quite ready to handle this team at this point in the season, especially with it being their second game of the weekend.
Thinking about Blaze Reardon there in goal, he took a ton of shots against the Whip Snakes there last Saturday in that game. Obviously taking a loss. He made a ton of saves though, but the defense really there. If you allow all those shots, if you allow Tom Schreiber and if you allow Ryan McNamara, or if you allow, let's say, a Marcus Holman and Grant Ament to get comfortable and start taking shots, if they can get those shots on goal, doesn't really matter how good Blaze Reardon is. A few of those will eventually get past. So we'll see how this defense fares, this Chaos defense fares against this Archers offense. And then we were talking about a few of those pieces in transition. Obviously, Scott Ratliff. Obviously, Dominique Alexander, Latrell Harris. Jared Connors is joining this team this weekend. National champion LSM with Virginia, Jared Connors. So expect this transition game for the Archers to be even better. Let's move on now to the first game there on Saturday. Just to backtrack here, we got the two defending champions, the Whip Snakes, obviously the two-time PLL defending champs, and the MLL 2020 bubble champs, the Cannons, coming into this one. The Cannons were able to get their first win of the season. I don't think a few of us obviously called that one, but we expected the Cannons to kind of struggle out of the gate. They're looking real good after those first two games. I think it was a good I would say it's a good thing that they played their doubleheader there week one, because I think they were able to get comfortable with training camp, with the long weekend. They were able to be together on the field, playing obviously a lot. And Liam, the Whip Snakes haven't lost in like 650-something days. What are we thinking here with this one against the Cannons? Do we think the Cannons can pull this one off?
I think that it's still the Whip Snakes, but I am a lot more confident in saying that this is going to be competitive. Watching that Cannons defense, Nicky Morocco in net played unreal. I think he's averaging 16 saves a game. He had 21 in that first game, I think it was, against the Redwoods, where they lost by 1. Him backstopping a strong core group. They have one of the best short stick D-mids in the world, and Zach Goodrich, who basically is a fifth pole. Yeah, exactly. If that is where you have to start with this Whip Snakes team. You have to be able to hold a lot of very good players to minimal points, which is very tough to do. And with the border opening up, I think a lot of people don't realize that Brian Cole is going to show up for the Whips at some point, and it's just going to get worse for every other team in the league. And so the D group showed out quite well this week, and I thought that it was impressive. Brody Merrill, he looked like his feet were a step behind, but he's kind of got a resurgence here because of the pieces around him. He's got Resetti at the LSM, so he can help. He's quick. He's able to recover well. And then he's just got good contributing close guys around him. So Brody Merrill I think he was second in the league in ground balls after TD Ireland. He was tied for top of the league in caused turnovers just by picking passes off. So that core D group is going to have their best game yet as a unit together. But that could potentially slow down the Whips. But on the other side, you also have to be able to score. We're going to see Lyle paired back up with Shane Jackson, which is going to be great. You get the Georgia Swarm teammates playing together again. You're going to have Paul Rabel, who seems to be having a resurgence. Don't know if it's the new girlfriend or if he just is happy with his new home. But it looks like they're a pretty cohesive unit. I would like to think that this game will be evenly matched. And the one place that it won't be is at the stripe. Joe Nardella is going to continue to dominate. So it's going to have to come up to that defense to really hold the Whip Snakes in check and be able to create turnovers and, get possessions going the other way. And then one thing I need to point out is Michael Earhart's stat line from last week. In one game, he had a 2-pointer. He had 8 ground balls. He had 3 caused turnovers. And I think he had an assist as well. And so if you have your LSM pushing transition like that, that's not going to be easy for teams that sometimes just sub through the box to get back on defense. We've seen Rabel get back on defense a couple times in the games this past weekend, but if the Whips get pushing transition, then it's going to be a little bit farther apart than I'm making it out to seem. But it should be competitive. It's going to go the Whips' way. I think as a staff, we're pretty confident that that's the case. There might be 1 or 2 dark horse picks. I know Jordan Johnson's good for one of those, but we'll just have to wait and see what it looks like because both teams had good opening weekends.
We just talked about the Archers and their transition game with Scott Ratliff. The Whip Snakes too, just having that ability to move fast and transition, get a lot of goals there off transition from whether it's from their poles or from their D middies, their transition guys. So definitely looking forward to this game here. This will be Chris Hogan's first game of the season as he is set to dress for this one, a part of that 19-man Cannons roster. And this will be the first game of the season on NBC Main. So absolutely looking forward to that one, the rematch between the 2 defending champions. So, and I think you are right. Jordan definitely did pick the Cannons. I'm the only one on the War Dogs right now. I was going to get to that in a minute when we get to our picks. I'm the only one currently on the War Dogs over the Chaos. We'll see how that goes. I'm still living, riding, and I'm going to die with the War Dogs here, I think, this season because I was very big on the War Dogs coming into this one. Let's move on there to our second game of Saturday. I was about to say our last game of the weekend, but our second game of Saturday, we got the Redwoods favored by 2.5 goals over the Atlas. And the Atlas, they didn't look good last week, but as we mentioned, the War Dogs really just didn't seem to show that motivation and that effort. But the Atlas, it was there. It was there. They were without a few key pieces that we kind of made – a few people made known. I know Dan made known. They didn't have Craig Chick out there. Doc Sakin obviously wasn't there yet, but he will be there this weekend, obviously with Jared Connors coming off that national championship. So, Harry, what does the Atlas need to do this weekend against this Redwoods team to try to turn their season around? Really, week 1 of the season, but they just did not look good last week. So, really, it seems like each week their season's kind of on the line.
Yeah, I think that what they need to do, and this kind of goes for really every team that's playing the Redwoods this year, is figure out how you are going to defend and slide towards that first-line midfield group of Miles Jones, Sergio Perkovic, and Jules Hengberg. I think Jules was a huge storyline this weekend and how he came back after missing 2020 because of that heart issue due to COVID-19 that, he's obviously now able to play again because of that. And we saw Miles Jones with short stick matchups taking advantage of that. Jules took advantage of a short stick, and Sergio took advantage of a short stick that led to a 2-pointer against whoever they played, the Chrome, in their second game of the weekend. Really, the only short stick was Zach Goodrich, who was able to kind of slow down whoever doesn't get the pull on that midfield. So figure out how you're going to defend that. How are you going to slide? When are you going to slide? Making sure you're not sliding early and things like that. Especially, if Jules gets the pull, Miles Jones is going to have a short stick, and he dissects defense very well as a midfielder, where he can see through that first and second slide at times. So the Atlas are going to have to figure that out. One of their short stick D-mids on the roster is Danny Logan. I mean, he's a young guy, fresh in the league, so that defense just needs to make sure that they have a game plan for that midfield. And then obviously try and hold down Rob Pinnell, who's come back in a big way from X. who's, just throwing dimes. Ryan Lee's been awesome for the Redwoods, but I think it all starts with finding a way to slow down that midfield group, because there are a lot of stars on that group. And then offensively for the Atlas, you mentioned that the hustle's there. This is a group that still isn't entirely together for what we expected to see this season. I'm not sure where Peter Dirth is, if they expect him to play. I'm not sure if he was at camp. Dox is going to be there this weekend. I think that'll be huge. I mentioned earlier that Jeff Teet's still not there. So this is a group. They're trying to mesh. They're trying to gel. But I do think that it's going to be competitive and that the Atlas are going to have a real chance in this game, because the Redwoods, as good of a team as this is, and as a lot of people like them as favorites to win the championship, I think that they typically play games a little bit closer than what people would imagine, depending on the opponent. I think that's been a constant theme, other than toward the end of 2019. I forget who they played. It might have been no, I don't believe it was the Atlas. I want to say that it was the Chrome that they might have played. They wound up blowing them out, and that was the difference. And that's really the biggest win that they've had. A lot of their games have been fairly close. So I expect this one to be competitive. I expect the Atlas to be right there. Trevor Baptiste, I think, could be a huge part of that with TD Erlin, but also you have to account for the wings that the Redwoods brought out in that first game. So I do think it's going to be close. The Atlas fans need to be patient with them. It looks like Jeff Teet does have the intentions to play professionally, like we mentioned. And so just let this offense mesh. I think it'll be close. We'll see if the Atlas can pull off an upset.
Just got to be patient. Just got to be patient here if you are an Atlas fan. Jeff Teet is coming. That's really all the good news I got for you, though. Jeff Teet is coming soon. But really, you look at this, the face-off battle is really what's interesting to me, because we're going to have TD Erlin, the rookie, had a great weekend last weekend in his 2 games. Trevor Baptiste, despite the loss to the Archers, he still played very, very well facing off there for the Atlas. So this matchup here at the Face-Off X, one that's very, very interesting to me. Craig Chick, the creator of Chaos, he'll be out there with the Atlas. They're on the at the LSM position, expecting him to be on the wings. So we'll see how his addition this weekend might change the Atlas, how they play this weekend. We'll see how that unfolds. Let's get to our picks, shall we? We got our first game of the weekend tonight. The Chaos favored by 1.5 goals over the Water Dogs. Harry, who are you taking in this one?
I'm going to take the Chaos.
Liam?
Chaos, yep.
I am the only one, I believe, out of our Flash staff taking the Water Dogs. Like I said, I'm going to live, ride, and die most likely with the Water Dogs. Here I got a nice little team future on them as well. Over-under set at 20.5. Seems kind of low, even though we do have 2 of the best goalies in the game. Dylan Ward, obviously now with the Water Dogs. He'll be playing against his former team with the Chaos, so we will see how this one unfolds. You 2 guys got the Chaos. I have the Water Dogs. Let's move on now to that championship rematch. We mentioned Jordan Johnson, I believe, is one of 2 on our Flash staff picking the Cannons. Dan said on Tuesday, he said there's no chance I'm picking against the Whipsnakes for a very, very long time. I said, unless it's the Archers, that's the only time I'm going to consider it. Who do you guys got on this one?
I want to make a joke and say that Chris Hogan's going to be the difference in this game, but I think I'm going to go Whipsnakes. It's too hard to not choose the team that hasn't lost in what feels like 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a long time before I ever think they're going to lose. So it's Whips for me as well.
The Cannons had a good showing last week, even in their loss with the Redwoods. Played really, really, really well. They had a big lead over the Redwoods in that game. Redwoods obviously though able to come back. Really, I think the thing of that game was just game of runs. It was back and forth. One team went on a run. Next team, where you heard in the sideline huddles, Nat St. Laurent continuing to tell his team, hey, it's a game of runs. We're going to be on our run eventually. So we'll see how this one goes. Again, the Cannons, though, turned a lot of heads. Like, we weren't expecting them to look this good, and they looked really good. Paul Rabel, obviously, the resurgence of him. You got Lyle Thompson. Anybody, you have a chance if you have Lyle Thompson. So we'll see how they do this weekend. I also have the Whipsnakes in this one. Over-under set at 24.5. Really, if you look at the over-unders this week, it's like a wasteland. You got the 20.5s and then just a jump to the 24 and a 25.5. So we'll see how they go. But again, you're dealing with Kyle Bernlord. Nick Morocco played great last weekend. So we'll see how that one shakes out. Again, we all have the Whipsnakes in this one. Let's move on to that second game there on Saturday. We got the Redwoods favored by 2.5 goals over the Atlas. Over-under set at 25.5. I'll throw this out there already. 25.5. I've been saying it. Magic number for over-under is 26, so take the under. Who do you guys got on this one, Redwoods or Atlas?
I'm going Redwoods. I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think it'll be closer than what most people would expect. I didn't really like the spread on this one. Redwoods minus 2.5. But I still think the Woods are going to pull it out just because the weapon that TD is, and then Rob Pennell, now he's been playing this year.
Yeah, I got the Woods as well. I just wasn't impressed enough by what the Atlas did that first weekend. I would expect TD and Trevor Baptiste to be a better matchup. They also played each other in college at least once, a couple times, and I think they're pretty decently matched. But the way TD started the season, I'm going to give him the edge there as well and just wait to see how this plays out. But what the Woods showed me versus what the Atlas showed me, it's roll Woods.
Very excited for this face-off matchup between TD Ierlan for the Redwoods and Trevor Baptiste for the Atlas. I'm also going to go with the Redwoods, not the Atlas. I'm going with the Redwoods. I like the 2.5. I know you said, Harrison, you didn't like the 2.5. I do kind of like this 2.5. And then you also look at that over-under. Like I said, 26 being the magic number. Take the under in this one. You got two good goalies. Tim Troutner played great last weekend in both of their games. And then Jack Concannon struggled. But we've seen, in 2020, in 2019, Jack Concannon, when he gets locked in, he is locked in, especially on these, we see with the Redwoods, especially bringing in Ryan Lee, a lot of close, right in front of the goal. Jack Concannon is one of the best goalies in the game in terms of, plays, saves right in front of the goal, doorstep opportunities. So we'll see how this one unfolds. I also have the Redwoods in this one, and lock of the week is the under 25.5. Let's move on to Sunday, where we have Chrome and the Water Dogs. Chrome without Jordan Wolf. They are the underdogs in this one at +1.5. Who do you guys got on this one?
This one's kind of tough. Obviously, Chrome, they didn't look great. We know that Wolf isn't going to be healthy. Gaudet, we don't know when he's going to be on that team. But I still like the Chrome a little bit more than the Water Dogs. I just kind of look at that Water Dogs roster, and then when I see what I saw from them in the field last weekend, it just seemed like a team that was lost and kind of confused, and I think it's going to take a few weeks for them to figure it out, just given the structure of the league and when these teams can actually get together and prepare. So I like the Chrome in this one. The Water Dogs, I just really haven't seen enough out of them to trust them to win a game.
Yeah, I actually think that this roster looks a lot better than last week for the Water Dogs. I'm going with the Dogs this week. Like you said, we don't know about Jordan Wolf. There's some question marks there. Jake Withers at the faceoff stripe was winning 2 of every 3 faceoffs he took. I think he ended up at like 64%. Added possessions. We're missing Sowers, but at the same time, Ben Reeves is back, which, maybe just having that a bit more veteran presence might help. We're going to see an upgrade on defense. No shot at BJ Grill, but we're finally going to get Ben Randall on the field, which is going to be a big difference. I think that there's 1 or 2 times where we saw BJ Grill slide, and he was just kind of a step behind or a little bit undersized to stop some of the size of some of these guys in the league. So it's a bit better for some matchups, I would think, this week. And then Ben Mcintosh is back for this week too. He's a Team Canada first line midfielder. He's NLL All-Star. He's pass first, so he's going to find a lot of these shooters. I think Ryan Brown might benefit from him being back. You kind of pair him up with somebody who can distribute the ball a bit better. In a 50-50 game, I'm just going to give this roster a nudge, and we'll see how it plays out. But I'm going to give this team the benefit of the doubt for this week. I think they'll bounce back.
This was, as Harry said, this is probably the hardest game that I was looking at in terms of picking. I'm the only one that's taking the Water Dogs there against Chaos, but I'm pretty confident there, I think, in the Water Dogs. This one, I'm going with the Chrome, especially with that +1.5. I think it stays close. I like the Chrome in this one. I think we'll see Colin Heacock probably playing a little bit of attack. We'll see how that works out. So I got the Chrome in this one. Over-under set at 20.5. I would say take the over in that one. Hopefully the Water Dogs can string together some goals, but we will see how this one unfolds. But really for the War Dogs, this is a big weekend, trying to not fall to 0-3 because that would be a tough start to the season. And then the Chaos as well, hoping to not fall to 0-3. They got the Archers, which is a pretty tough draw here for this Sunday game, that second game of that doubleheader. Over-under set at 24.5. Archers are favored by 2.5 goals. Liam, who do you have in this one?
I mean, the Archers, they're shooting lights out. They were like 8 for 8 for 10 points to start the game. Like, that offense, until you can slow it down, I don't think it gets slowed down until they play the whips. There was some face-off struggles, but their D looked great. They got the Cyborg back there. They're going to cause turnovers. They're going to be tough to beat on those matchups on their defensive side of the ball. So I don't think that what the Chaos is going to bring to the table is going to overcome that team. That team is a secure lock for second place in the league at this point in time, regardless of how well the Woods do. Whatever the standings say, it's Whips, it's Archers, and then it's the Woods until one of those teams loses. And I'm sticking with that regardless of how teams look until we see those changes.
Yeah, it's Archers for me in this one too. And just, I mean, the offense alone, before you even get into the defense, and you mentioned some of those guys, Graham Hossack, who I didn't even get around to mentioning earlier. I mean, the defense on this team is ridiculous. And then the offense is just an absolute never-ending line of guys who just bring the heat, whether it's being able to dissect the defense or put the ball in the back of the net. Some guys can do both really well. I mean, this offense just is, I think it's a perfect blend of the right guys for the field dimensions, the shot clock, and just the way the PLL plays. It is just such a perfect group. And so, yeah, I don't really see very many scenarios where the Chaos come away with a win here, so I'm sticking with the Archers.
I also like the Archers in this one. I like the -2.5. Adam Gittleman, coming off his best single game performance of his career. Obviously going up against Blaze Reardon, one of the best goalies in the game. Some would say he is the best goalie in the game, so we'll see how this one unfolds. But I also have the Archers in this one. But Harrison, Liam, I want to thank you both for joining me today. That is going to do it for us as we're looking ahead here to week 2 in the PLL. And I want to thank you all for watching and or listening if you are not already. Make sure to subscribe to Goal Line Extended on YouTube and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss our future shows. You can also follow along on Instagram and Twitter at GL Extended. All of the links that you will need will be in the description of the video or podcast that you're viewing or listening to right now. And you can also head on over to lacrosseflash.com. You can find a ton of awesome content over there, including our weekly power rankings and picks. Greggy's Gamers and Noah's Hot and Cold segment is live on the site as well. Harry and Liam's fantasy segment is there as well, so make sure to check that out. We'll also be back tonight with our Twitter Spaces pregame show, so make sure to follow at Lacrosse Flash on Twitter so you don't miss it. We'll be back on Tuesday with the PLL Flash, and then a week from now on Friday, we'll have a new Goal Line Extended out. So make sure to like, follow, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of it. But we're now on to week number 2 from Atlanta. I hope you all enjoy the weekend. And like I said, we'll be back on Tuesday with the PLL Flash, to recap it all. Enjoy the weekend. Cheers.
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at GL Extended and subscribe to the show on any of your favorite podcast outlets. You can find Lacrosse Flash on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and online at lacrosseflash.com.